so we're all aware. Okay, great. So what happens when you go live? The other thing to know is that it takes a minute for people to trickle in. So we'll let that happen. While that's happening, I'd like to hear how y'all are doing. Maybe like 20 seconds of what's happening in your worlds would be nice.
You got it. You can go first, I guess.
I'm doing good. Just pretty much been working a lot. I'm taking a few other classes. I work at a restaurant, so it's interesting. It takes up a lot of my time. It's also interesting to see everything changing with like COVID and everything going on, working in a place like that. But I'm just hoping everything stays the way it is right now. We don't go back to like more like lockdown and stuff like that.
Yeah. Here in New York, they're talking about requiring like a vaccine confirmation or status for restaurants. I don't know. Are you in Jersey?
Yeah, I'm in Jersey.
I assume it may or may not be the case there. Hi, Camila. We're just doing intros real quick. We are actually live. We have 2 viewers, so I can frame our conversation. Yeah. So let me actually talk about
sister.
Say it again.
One of those is my little sister.
Oh, hey, what's up, little sis? All right, we love it. Thank you, little sis, for joining. I love that. That's cool. Yeah, I share this on my personal social, and a lot of people from Yonkers, New York, are viewing for whatever that's worth. That's just where I'm based, and that's where people pay attention. So here we are. This is part 2 of what just happened about an hour ago. Essentially, what we are doing is culminating 6 weeks of like really deep, sort of, I think, like grueling, painstaking labor around engaging really like a night, what I like to think as like a nice spread of opinions and perspectives on what this word abolition means. What it is doing politically, what it's doing socially, because as we all know, a few months ago, the term resurfaced. It's obviously not a new term, right? We know that, but it was sort of repopularized with some recent political events, which I'm sure you all are going to talk about. And so basically what the class is an intro to social justice course, which I have a fancy banner that will remind us why we're here. Intro to Social Justice course at Rutgers. So technically we are wherever we are, but for the purposes of the next sort of 57 minutes, we are going to be in New Brunswick, New Jersey, on Rutgers campus, talking about our course, Intro to Social Justice, which we focused on this idea of abolition. So we had a lot of readings, we had a lot of documentaries, talks, discussion posts, etc. that we grappled with. And basically my ask for people who join the course is to basically take together all these perspectives and generate our own, right? So what is it that we think? What is it that we want? What is it that we think about this term? What is it that we want this term to do? What is it that we see happening in the world around this term? And how do we, do we agree with all that stuff? Do we not? Like, what, sort of let's grapple. So it's a really open exercise. I think it has proven to be generative. I wonder if that's the case for y'all. We'll hear in a few. But so we'll go around and maybe take about 5 or so, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, sharing your name, your major, maybe why you came to the class, maybe not, but then just dig into what you wrote for us, and then at the end, once we all go around in sort of like a nice fashion, we will take questions from the audience. Maybe your little sis will jump in, Camila. She'll be like, help us out. I'll be asking questions, or maybe we'll just talk across. We'll see what happens. But that's all I have. So whoever wants to jump in, please, by all means. I will be quiet, and I'm going to keep my face up here, so I'll be affirmingly nodding at you and, all that stuff, but I'm going to listen. So go on. But so we'll go around. Yep. Whoever wants to go first, tell us your name. I'd love to know your major. And then just share what you wrote for your perspective. What is it that you think about abolition?
All right, so I'll jump in first. Oh, did someone?
Sorry. No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay.
This is the first time. The last thing I'll say. I know I said I was going to be quiet. This is the first time we're actually seeing each other as a course. So it's not like we've gotten a chance to really like work together. So awkward things will happen, but we'll work through it.
You sure you don't want to get this? Okay, I'll go. That's fine. My name's Akash. I'm a business analytics major. I took this class to get ahead, but I also thought it was super interesting. So here I am. When I think of abolition, and as for whatever I've gained from the course, I think of it in two different frames, one for prisons and one for police. What I decided to write on for my paper was for prisons, with like a focus on, especially on the for-profit aspect. But what I gained from learning about like prisons in Norway, from learning how prisoners were treated during the COVID-19 crisis, is that there's a huge crisis of dehumanization that's occurring in American prisons. So that's what ends up happening is we as a civilian population end up detaching ourselves or detaching the prison population from us. So it gives us a right, a quote unquote right to treat them separately with different standards of life. And I think that the biggest crime that's being committed with these prisons is more than just your liberty, which is the essence of a prison, is being taken away, or your humanity is being taken away. So I detailed in my paper how this is the case and how this is supported by institutions such as ALEC, which was the American Legislative Exchange Council, which lobbies Congress to allow them to perpetuate this cycle because they're all tied up with funding and legislators that are being written for Congress. From these experiences and what I've read and watched through the course materials, I definitely reached a position where I feel like abolition is a necessary perspective in order for people who are in prison right now to regain their humanity that we have stripped from them. I'm not sure what my ideas would be for an alternative system, because when you start from scratch, it's super hard to build an infrastructure, but it doesn't mean that you can't tear down one that isn't working. As for my positions when it comes to, I know we worked a little bit with defunding police. I actually have a little different perspective than what might be the mainstream for given the course materials, but I actually don't believe in defunding police, but rather increase police funding in a way to hire a better police force. I think that if we have higher training competencies that are required, better vetting, and just an overall better program in which we can invest more money as a community, we can yield better police officers who are equipped to handle situations that we have in terms of de-escalation, as well as checking in with mental health, which sometimes are what these problems start from. So I didn't articulate that in my paper. That wasn't exactly my focus, but I did come to terms that I don't believe in defunding, because if we end up defunding, at least from my perspective, the problems that occur now, there's a good chance they'll just get worse, because if we have less money to vet possible officers, they're just going to get worse in quality, and any infrastructure that is crumbling already will completely fall. But in essence, that's my perspective on abolition between prisons and between police work.
Gosh, I always appreciate you for sticking to your true beliefs, regardless of wherever the group may go. I think the hardest thing to do is really if there isn't like a wave to sort of stick to where you are. And so I appreciate that. I don't know how to get around some of that energy towards one direction. I'm working on that as like an instructor, but I appreciate you for pushing and being honest the whole time. So.
Of course, I'm glad to. Thank you.
Who's up next?
Hi.
Hey.
My name is Camilla. I'm a criminal justice major, and I double minor in women's and gender studies and social justice. So I guess there's my reason for taking this class, all in its own. As far as my perspective on abolition, I am for it. I am more for it now than I was before taking this class. And I've mentioned this a couple of times in some of my assignments, but I don't believe in defunding the police, only because I know if we defund the police, it's just going to take away money from any good that they actually have and focus on like the weapons and like unnecessary stuff. So any type of de-escalation training, mental health training, diversity training, anything that they have, those will be the first things to get clipped. So like I've said in some of my assignments, professor that you've seen, when I was marching in the movements last year, I heard a lot of, and I put this in my essay as well, I heard a lot of like defund the police, but at the same time they were saying the NYPD has to go. So it's either they have to go or you're just going to reduce their funding and they're going to stay. And in my opinion, it has to go completely. There needs to be a new system put into place, not necessarily an incarceration system, but a different kind of system. A lot of like what we read, like the Ceasefire, Chicago, the Penn program, I think those are a lot. It's a good place to start. I don't think that we're starting necessarily from scratch. A lot of us think that we're starting from scratch because it's not known. These programs are not like extremely known, widely known. But the more we read about it in class, like the more my perspective not necessarily shifted, because I was already towards the side of no police or no system of what we have now. But the class solidified it, I guess you could say. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to know we got some WGSS folks here. All right, Nicole, are you on, or are we going to go with,
Yeah, I'll go next. So my name is Nicole. I'm an environmental policy major. I took this class just as an elective out of interest because I just find interest in this kind of stuff. I would say my perspective definitely enhanced, but I do agree with what she just said. Like I was kind of already on one side, like the same side that she was just talking about before taking this course, but it definitely enhanced after. I thought like there was an interesting conversation about defunding the police. I definitely agree that like doing that isn't going to solve anything, but I feel like it would depend on the area you're talking about really for that specific question. Cause like a lot of areas know like defunding the police like would not work. But in terms of like New York City, I did watch the last live stream, the one that was before this. And one of the students in this class also was talking about how like they are so for funding and like they're the most funded police, like, and they kind of go against like, not against, but like they go hand in hand with like the more you fund, the less crime you should see. Whereas like that is completely debunked in New York City. It's like not true at all. So I think that plays into a big factor of that. I didn't focus my paper on defunding the police. I focused it more on prison systems and on a lot of the videos that we watched, just for the fact that I enjoy watching videos over reading. But I don't know, it really opened my eyes to a lot of the like reforming that I guess I didn't realize needed to be done. Especially with things like we watched the one in Norway, like to see something so completely different to what we have and like how much it's working for them. And like even one of the, I don't know his name, but like one of the officers or wards or whatever he was in Norway was talking about how they got this ideology from America. Like they got it from us, like they're learning from us, yet we're not even learning from ourselves or from when we say that we believe and we don't. I thought that was very interesting. And then again, with the whole COVID stuff going on, like these people are like not even treated like people. Like understandably they're in prison, but as much as like we want to keep the spread of COVID from happening outside of prison, there are multiple guards and people and even the prisoner themselves, like that's going to spread out eventually. So I thought that was very interesting. Especially one of the people interviewed was saying like he gets like 3 bars of soap a month. Like he can't even follow the CDC guidelines even if he wanted to. Like he just can't. I thought that was very interesting. That's pretty much what I focused my paper on, was like the reform of prisons. And I also thought the Can't Wait teach-in was very interesting. I liked hearing the different perspectives of people that are like actually in these fields and like in these communities and like what they were doing. So I wrote a little bit about that in my paper too. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wrote about.
Thank you. Thank you. Got 2 left, and then we can begin to talk across.
Hi guys, my name is Benisha Chaba and I'm a rising senior and I'm majoring in psychology. I feel like going through this class, my perspective on abolition definitely evolved a lot. Um, Before, I honestly was really confused about what exactly it consisted of and what, abolitionists were like fighting for because I found like different people were saying different things, so I couldn't really put it together before this class. So going through all of these readings and, resources really helped me basically like put the puzzle pieces together and figure out what it really means. Um, I found myself going through the readings and understanding what, these people were saying and actually mostly agreeing with everything, but I just didn't know before that it was quote unquote abolitionist, thinking and an abolitionist perspective. Um, I also was just really confused about how we would dismantle these systems and like what we would replace them with. So my paper basically focused on and highlighted some of the issues that abolitionists are concerned about and talk about to explain their viewpoints. So, um, one would be unfair and harsh treatment of prisoners, the lack of restorative justice and focusing more on punishment rather than rehabilitation. I also made a connection to how, students are treated in public schools as well. For the most part, the schools are mostly focused on punishment and, putting a label on certain, and so I just found that connection, um, to, how prisoners are treated and them getting labeled and not really being rehabilitated. The third issue that I talked about is how there is a lack of resources for transitioning into civilian life for prisoners. They don't really have education or resources provided in these systems for them to, go out and be able to reintegrate into society. Um, and then, of course, another issue, one of the main issues is the racial biases and the inequality in these systems. And then lastly, I highlighted intersectionality and how other groups and minorities also suffer through these systems. One of the strongest arguments I feel like that helped me understand abolitionists and their perspective has to do with the 13th Amendment and watching that documentary. So when slavery was eradicated, this also meant the the economic system for the country um, was demised, and they needed to rebuild the economy. And so they did this by criminalizing and dehumanizing Black and Brown individuals. The 13th Amendment was created, and, with this creation, it also allowed for this loophole, and slavery was gone, but it still existed if you were a prisoner/criminal. And so this documentary explains how the country needed a way for the Black community to stay behind, and the most effective way they could do that was by enslaving them. And so, with movements like the war on drugs, these um, they were able to put this specific community behind. And so the foundation of these systems is discriminatory and oppressive at its core, and is the main reason why abolitionists fight to dismantle and replace these systems. And it's one of the main reasons that swayed me into this perspective. When it comes to replacement, I think the main thing that we would need to change is heavily focus on prevention and creating a society in which crime is prevented. This can be done by, making sure everyone has the ability to access specific resources such as healthcare or, mental health and substance abuse resources. Another way we would have to change to make this work, I feel like, is to focus less on punishment and work forwards to rehabilitation and restorative justice. Instead of quickly labeling people as criminals, we should figure out a way where they can have access to specific rehab programs and reintegrate back into society. So overall, my perspective on abolition has evolved throughout the semester, and I also think it's great that we're able to talk about issues like these in classes, especially because the youth and students are behind a lot of social justice change in the world. So that's all.
Thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for being thorough and going through your outline. I have plenty more to say. I'm sure others do too, but I know we have one last person, so I'll be quiet. Josh.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. It's all you.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. So my perspective on abolition is basically reforming the prison population, because normally prisons are the last thing you would see as a solution for prisoners, because prisons themselves, if you viewed the documentary before, I think 13th, so long the history of prison.
So I'm having trouble hearing you. Others might. I see. Yep, I see nods. We're having trouble hearing you. I don't know if you can try again, but you're like going in and out. I heard 13th and I lost you. Nope, you sound like a robot. Not anything yet. Okay, I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna fill up some space, like we do in the performance world. Give you a chance to return, and I'll just talk a little bit. And then if you get some, oh, he's trying. Okay, can y'all hear him, or is it just he's gone? He's gone. No. Okay. All right, maybe he's gonna come back. All right. Yeah, this is. I just want to say how amazing it is for me. Like, it's honestly, like, it's so. I think it's rare that we get a chance to come together and spend time like mulling over like a hot term, like I think we always have these like hot terms. Like, I think I'd love to do a class on what like BIPOC is. I'd love to do a class on that, because we're sort of like using it and not thinking about it.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah, go ahead. I was
just because you said hot term. I'm assuming you're talking about like abolition, right?
I am. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Go ahead. I'll finish my thought after you jump in. Go ahead. Do you think?
I'm sorry. No. Actually, finish your thought. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, it's like we don't. I'm not sure that. I think what's been nice is to like grapple with the term itself, and like not assume that we know what it is, or act like we all know what we're talking about. And I appreciate being like sitting in some confusion together, and that's all I was gonna say. But what go ahead. What was you gonna say about hot term?
It's just a thought that popped into my head. I was writing my paper at work, because I work as a receptionist, so I have like a lot of free time or whatever.
Mhm.
But I was writing my paper and I had to do something real quick. So I had someone just like cover the desk, and it was my coworker, and she was like, just happened to be like reading through my paper. And when I came back, I was like, oh, you were reading it, like, what did you think? And she was telling me, she's like, I don't know, I feel like something's off. And she goes, I think it's just the word abolition. She was like, because I'm not too keen on the word, or like it feels like a very strong word. And I think that's how a lot of people see it. Like they just hear the word abolition and it's like negative thoughts. So I just want to like chime in and say that.
Yeah, no word. That's right. Thank you for that. People freak out. Like, woof, what are you talking about? So let's see, we got Pav is back. But yeah, yeah, thanks for that story. That sounds really stressful. Pavan Raj, you back?
Yeah, really sorry. My internet was kind of just broken.
Oh, you sound significantly better. You sound great.
Yeah, thank
take it away.
Yeah, okay. So where was I said I think we're talking about prison reform. Is that correct?
Maybe you should just start from the beginning. Let us know sort of your name, what major you're in, and just walk us through your paper.
Okay. So my major is IT, and what I wrote in my paper was that prison reform is a necessity, because a lot of these issues that we're facing in society based on abolition is that people don't really get the justice that they deserve. What I mean by that is people in general, or prisoners in general, don't have the necessary resources to help them recover from their problems, because a lot of this has to do with the amount of time and effort it needs to be taken to help these prisoners not relapse again. And I think the 13th documentary really shows that prisoners are at the epicenter of today's abolitionists, because they're the ones that driving the prison industrial complex in a way. And I think being open to that discussion is a vital need, because if we want to produce a future generation where there's less people in prison, then the only way is to help them not relapse and to help them become a lot more situated in their problems and then recover from that. And another thing that I pointed out in my article or my essay is that the experience that these prisoners go through in prison is just traumatic. And I think that local law authorities should be listening to that kind of traumatic events, because how could they express themselves besides just laying in prison doing nothing. So prison reform is a big necessity, because, and I keep emphasizing it, because it's the only way to help these prisoners get out of their problems. And you can also say we should also reform the police, but police only have a small role in that agenda, because police itself is very they're like a small unit, they're like a small cog in the big machine, if that makes sense. And so prisoners really tell a story about they tell a story about how America has been these past decade, if not even more, because they tell a unique story about how we imprison a lot of people, but at what cost? Because most of our resources are allocated towards prison complexes, such as penitentiaries and lockups and etc. So is that something that really should be emphasizing? Because from what I heard, most of our resources aren't even properly allocated to the proper things like education or relapse programs or such as those things. And I think it's something that we need to really discuss as a generation, because we are the future, and I think the future starts with us.
No, thanks for that. Yeah, I appreciate you pushing us to think about like what I heard you say, and maybe this, I heard you talking about like police officers, and what was interesting about Gunisha's points earlier was how, and Gunisha, correct me if I if I like miss conveying this,
Yeah, it's fine.
but I heard Gunisha talking about like policing existing outside of police, outside of prisons, and in schools, and in other interactions. And I thought that was an interesting. We can hear you breathing, Farhan.
Oh, sorry.
It's all
I'm
good.
holding my mic up. That's why.
No, I'm here for it. Anyway, so I just wanted to share. Like, I appreciate how the great thing about this course is that there are so many perspectives, and that's why, at the top of the syllabus it says perspectives, and that's why the paper is perspectives, because even though I think sometimes we're thinking about like a lot of our material may seem like it's in one direction, it really is like a wide range of approaches to this idea, of this term abolition, this thing. And to Camila's point, like it's just such a charged thing. Like people really get uncomfortable with it, and maybe there are other words that we can use, but it's the word that's being circulated. So I'm glad that we got a chance to grapple with it together. So what do y'all think? You all haven't talked to each other probably ever, unless you know each other personally. So now that you heard about what each other wrote, you may have things to say about each other's stuff, or something that came up, or those anecdotal stories in the workplace are interesting too, like other things that come to mind, or that have come to mind over the past half hour would be maybe a good place to start.
I thought it was interesting when you discussed Camilla. Sorry about that.
It's all right, we're all in our homes.
I'll let someone else take over for a minute.
What happened? You're good. It's all good. It's just at work.
He goes crazy. Anyways, I thought it.
It's fine.
Okay, I thought it was super interesting when you mentioned your coworker didn't like that strong word, quote unquote. Because I feel like a lot of the times when we need to create actual monumental change, it's not going to be something comfortable, right? We have to step outside of our comfort zone as a society. So if the powers that be are keeping, prisons and police in the way they are right now, we need to make those powers uncomfortable, if you know what I'm saying, using language, whether it be in movements and legislature, on the floor of Congress, whatever it might be, that will really charge and emotionally push people to make a change. So I just thought that was super interesting when you mentioned that there's so many people who are just so complacent with what we have because of the word,
Yeah, I know what you mean. And it was interesting because to her, my entire paper seemed off because of the one word. But it's because I mentioned the word plenty of times in my paper because the paper was about police and prison abolition. But I guess I switched some words around in my, because she ended up actually proofreading it. She's a little older than me, she's graduated, so I took some of her advice, and I switched some things around. I didn't take out the word abolition, but it might have also been wording a little bit on my part, because eventually she was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But she's also just reading an essay on a class and on articles and on videos that I've been watching, for the past month. So she doesn't have that background knowledge that I had and used in writing the paper. She's just reading abolish the police, abolish the prisons, do away with all of them, basically.
Yeah, I think I discussed about this, and when we talked about in one of the critical analysis about what the students' role in, I don't know what the term that professor used, and just getting together, right? It was, I thought it's super important if we, as a college population, I believe personally that we're the most open to learning new things because of our role. We are students. And because college is a point where we mesh together and learn about different people, cultures, everything. So if we can spread education on a college level, then students can take these things home to work and whatnot. But you have to have a context, like you spoke about for your colleague. Without context, it seems like, oh, this makes no sense. Like there's nothing to back this up. And sure, you could cite as many articles, videos as you want, but until you see it, it doesn't really mean as much to the person. So that's why, yeah, I think it's super important if we discuss this in an educational forum, and then allow people who are educated, like say we take this course and we take another course in a longer format, and we have more discussions, and we can consider ourselves educated on the matter. Then we can take it and talk to other people about it, and stir up an actual conversation that we have at dinner tables, at bars, whatever it might be.
Did y'all try to do? Oh, sorry, you gonna say something?
No, I'm done.
Did this happen? Like, did you do the thing where you were like, oh, I've got this thing that I'm reading in class, and did you like tell people who had nothing to do with it and see their reaction? I mean, sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I actually told my mom. You can go ahead. Yeah, I just spoke.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I told my mom, and she wasn't raised in the States. So she actually grew up in British colonial Kenya. So it was a pretty different system there. And she just like has prison in her lens is like a pretty punitive thing. And it should be for her. That's what she thinks prison should be. So when I told her like, oh, I'm taking a class, we're discussing abolition, and she's like, why would you ever want to get rid of prisons? Like, where are you going to put all these people? And I start showing her some articles, some videos, and she starts coming around. She's like, yeah, this makes no sense. Like, as a family, we've been pretty careful about COVID. And then she's like, there's no way, like, imagine like living in a prison and you don't even have soap. Like, that's totally insane. So like giving these contexts and like even like a little piece, like for my mom, like I think even that piece of like about how COVID is being handled in prison was enough to like be like, hell no, like this is not okay. Like we need to, at the very minimum, like have a good amount of reform going on, But I'm sorry, I'll let you speak. I've been going on for a bit.
No, I was actually going to say like a parent comment too. My parents are from Brazil, and it's not there are many areas that, well, just like the U.S., are not very safe, but the prisons are extremely bad over there, just in terms of like conditions. I don't know. It's not. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's not even like a really sheltered place. Like think of like a barn where like horses stay, like the stables. I guess that's basically like how it is. But because my dad is very like hard-headed, he only thinks of like the criminal side of things, and like you said with your mom, like where are we gonna put all of these people? You can't just have them like roaming around. But one of the pluses that I see with like the prison system in Brazil, which is very different over here, is there's no life sentence. They're 20 years max, and then you get out. And a lot of times they do like time served, because the judicial system is also very crappy and trials take forever. So someone will be waiting like 4 or 5 years in prison for their trial, and then by the time they get their sentence, it's 5 years, so they don't have to serve any more time. I guess that's like the plus of the 20 years being the max, because you can't get a life sentence and then like that time served basically doesn't count. It's like, okay, you did 5 years, you have the rest of your life, basically. So yeah.
And I think that speaks to like and of course like no system is perfect, but I think that speaks to what the quality of like in nature what a prison should be, is to take like in essence, like if we started from here, like Norway does it, they only take you out of society, but everything else in your life remains basically constant, right? But if you take someone like in the US, you're taking their liberty and you're taking every quality of life and every aspect of happiness, and you're totally snatching it. And it seems so dystopian, and we just continue about our day like without even thinking about it. It's absolutely nuts to me sometimes. But like I get it. Like that makes a lot more sense in Brazil, is that they're only taking your liberty. So when they do the time served, again, if it's not perfect, they still are only taking your time and nothing else as punitive measures.
Yeah, Camilla did say that prisons are like barns, though. So I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. I was just saying, like, at least
I want to be a barn. You know what I'm
there's one
saying?
aspect that they got right, which I agree with.
It's so hard, like it's so easy to fall into the trap of like the grass is greener, or like like how do I say, glorifying, or sort of like memorializing something that's far away, like, oh, it's so much better over there. It's very easy to get caught up in that trap. Yeah, I noticed it's hard to see because I don't have faces, but if you're gesturing like you want to speak, I want to stay quiet for a second in case you don't have your camera on and you want to say something. Okay, so I have some other things I've been thinking about while listening to you all, and one is this idea of dehumanization that Akash brought up early on. Sounds similar to what everyone is talking about, and I think that's where it seems like on one hand we think it's important to take people's stuff away, right? And on the other hand, once it happens and it becomes real to us, we think it's just like ethically wrong. And so I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about police versus policing, or like police officers as actual people who are like humans who deserve to be humanized as well, versus like the system of policing, which exists even in our homes, like in our schools, our hospitals. And I'm thinking about just the last thing is like this term itself and what terms mean and what they can do. So like, what would something like a proactive justice system look like instead of a criminal justice system or something like that? So those are my sprinklings as I listened. We don't need to continue, but if y'all have other thoughts, like let's get them out while we have time. We probably won't ever see each other again as a group. So I just want to like cherish this time. And we have someone who did comment, who said that spreading awareness across the education system is vital with a heart. Just to comment on what an earlier discussion was bringing up for them.
Professor, in regards to what you said about a proactive system as opposed to a criminal system, I think what people overlook a lot of the time is why crime is committed in the first place. I feel that people overlook that there's poverty involved. There's, like a lack of education, a lack of funding. Like kids are in underserved schools, so they, might drop out and they might be more inclined to commit crimes for their sake of putting food on the table. And while that's not in any means to justify or glorify a life of crime, but it should be taken into consideration to solve that problem instead of focusing on the problem itself. And I think that as a society, in any aspect, we focus too much on what this person did wrong and now how the next person could not do the same mistake. You know what I mean? So if we, like, for example, I think I discussed this in like the artistic element for my paper, was if we allocate more money into funding like after school programs, which have been shown to retain and keep children off the streets where they might like be involved with gang violence or they might be involved with petty theft, whatever the case might be, is funding things that would stop crime from occurring in the first place. And that'd be proactive, stopping the crime as opposed to criminal, which would be punishing the crime.
Yeah, even like the word crime, like even like what is a crime, right? Like it gets like things become criminalized and decriminalized all the time.
Yeah.
So like, and we know some crimes people get in trouble for it's like disproportionately prosecuted based on the same action, right? And we call it a crime when it can be, we can like pick it apart all we want.
I wanted to put in a thought about what you said, like humanizing like police officers, like, under the uniform or whatever. I think that it's very hard to separate church and state when you are a police officer, just because like your morality and, your personal like ethics, like what you think is ethical and what isn't, very much plays into your job. Like if you are a racist, prejudiced person, you're most likely going to project that, I guess, like into your job. It's very hard to separate church and state. So I think that's something that like a lot of people need to watch out for too. And there has to, if, until prison and police systems get abolished, it's something that they have, at least in the academy or something, they need to focus on, I guess, their opinions and how they lead their lives, and very much so like social media content, because people like that are not scared to show it, very, at least in this day and age after 4 years of Trump. But yeah.
Yeah, no, right on. I mean, I think there's a lot of writing that talks about like how certain people become police officers and certain people assume security officer roles. Like it's a certain profile, kind of person who lend personality that like lends themselves to that kind of authoritative figure. And yeah, so complicated.
I'd like to add something to what you said. Like I think that when we like as a society demonize police officers, it does put a lot of pressure on their actions as well, because we had this whole conversation about people in prison needing to be treated as humans as well and being a victim of a system. We can't also forget that police officers at the end of the day are also people with unique thoughts and experiences that lend themselves to their actions, whether they might be right or wrong. So I think that, like, going back to something I said earlier about like increasing funding, and you mentioned the academy, was I read some article sometime last year, and it mentioned that in the US, the training time to become a police officer is drastically less than comparable nations like in Western Europe. And like if you pump in more funding to a school, your education, the quality of education and the quality of the graduates will be a lot better. We see that from any level from K through 12 to college. And I think that if that's something that if we put into police academies would yield ourselves to a lot better quality of candidates when they graduate. And that's why like I don't agree with the defunding aspect, is because if you take money away, a lot of the times in any aspect, education is something that takes a big cut. And if you decrease the education and the training needed, you're only going to decrease the quality of what we have, and in some cases isn't the best. And not to say that all, like, I don't believe with the statement like all cops are bad. Like I'm not in favor of that, but it certainly will yield to a larger percentage, whatever the percentage might be, of cops not being fit for the role.
Camila, you want to say something? I saw it. I'm like, go ahead. Do you think?
No, okay. I need to like gather my thoughts. I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll gather. We have time.
No, I just want to say that like I said, I also don't believe in defunding the police. I believe in getting rid of the police, because big cities like Los Angeles and Miami and New York City already receive billions of dollars in fundings. So with this much funding, if they are not allocating millions of dollars in funding to education, to de-escalation programs, to diversity programs, what makes you think that even more funding is going to do that? Like there are New York City, NYCPD is using this funding to get them Teslas. Like if you give them more money, they're gonna get more Teslas. Like that, at least that's how like I think about it. So my thing is cut the money and devise a different system, something that is more based on community work and community organizations. Because it's like I think it was the ceasefire Chicago. Their funding was cut because they weren't cooperating with Chicago PD. But who is going to cooperate with Chicago PD? Like the whole point is to get to the community to trust them so that they can better the community, because clearly CPD wasn't doing it. So I thought that was very dumb, like cutting their funding because they weren't cooperating with the police, when the whole purpose is to, hey, this is something else. It's an alternative to CPD. So why would the moment they start cooperating with CPD is the moment that community is like, okay, they have a different agenda. Like they're not for us, you know? So that's my take on funding.
And next question. We have a three-part question. No, it's a two-part with an optional. Okay. So do you believe the prison and police system should be abolished? If so, why? If not, what would be the policies that need to change? So, and Camilla Hart, I agree 100%. Okay. So we've got a lot happening on Facebook if y'all are not paying attention. But yeah, I guess this is, I think, so the question is, should police and prison systems be abolished? And I think, well, that's the question. I'll say what I think later. That's the question. What do y'all? And then if we can create some space for the people who don't have their faces up, or if people want to like bring their faces back because you all had faces before and now they're gone, and so let's maybe give somebody without any visual a chance to respond to that.
So I feel like we should abolish these systems, because before I used to believe that reform, it would just be enough, like we just need a lot of extreme reform and we'll be fine. But after this class, especially after watching one of Angela Davis's videos, she talked about the fallacy of prison reform, and how reform, like just adding on more reform isn't going to help, because the history of prison in itself is the history of prison reform. That's one of the quotes she said in her videos. So society has tried to make multiple changes already by reforming certain practices, but these reforms are just leading to more and more oppression and repression. And one of the examples Angela Davis talks about is how mandatory minimums replaced indeterminate sentencing, and how that was supposed to be a reform, but it just helped and aided into creating more problems.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Many people don't think about the reality that prison itself is a reform. So thanks for walking us through that. I see Mike's getting unmuted and muted. Anyone else want to take that? We've got a good maybe 6 minutes to go before I close this out with a final goodbye.
If I have a chance, I actually want to respond to what Camilla was saying earlier. I honestly think we're thinking about this kind of in the same angle, because when I think of increasing funding, it's increasing the funding to a point where the system can change, I guess, without being completely torn down. But I get what you're saying. You could just start over and create like a proactive system. But like I'm thinking on terms of, because you would need funding for that as well, right? And I'm thinking you transform it, and I would think it's easier and more logistically sound to transform it into a proactive system with that increased funding. But that's where I was thinking of. I wasn't thinking like increased funding to like give more weapons or give them Teslas or whatever the case might be. Like, yeah, that's absurd for sure. I agree with you 100% on that. But yeah, just a transformative use for the funding. That was my opinion.
I just want to say, I think Camilla's point is super interesting, because when you think about like who has the power of like managing their own budget in a city, like the way our systems are now is, the department manages its budget, right? And so you would have to like restructure. You'd have to like have you'd have to continue to like wrestle with this to get to a point where you're going to give money and then expect a department that has done a certain thing for its history to do something differently, which Camila holds a little hope for. And I mean, I don't blame her for that. You know, what are you going to say?
I don't want to, like, when I say like abolish and get rid of, it's the system that we have now. I don't know. I guess that was all I wanted to say. Like like you said, put funding when you, oh my God, I'm stuttering. I'm sorry. When you put, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Oh, get it back. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Just we'll give you like 20 seconds and you'll get your thought back. Don't worry.
So like when you were saying that the community-based organizations and stuff need funding, they do, obviously, but their intentions with those fundings is very different than what like NYPD's intentions are going to be. Like the professor said, NYPD, whatever funding they get, they're going to distribute it however they want. So speaking, you would need like a whole department, money managing department, basically, to distribute the money into more like education and more like learning programs and stuff like that. But I think that even that, like that wouldn't work, because that's not going to necessarily stop like police brutality or discrimination or racism among officers. Like, they have the mentality that they have, and is how like I think about it. Some people just grew up a certain way, or they have been taught something their entire life, or it's truly what they believe, and you're not going to change it. At least I don't think you're going to change it with some diversity programs or more education. That might piss them off and weed them out of the programs, I guess. That could do that, but I don't know. I feel like we have to abolish the system we have as a whole and just fund a completely different, more innovative, more efficient, and more humanizing one. So yeah.
Right on. I think that's a great way to close this out. I'm here for innovative, humane systems. But there's another comment. Government needs help, more than help. They need outside jurisdiction, check and balances of sorts. Funding could be funneled to those outside agencies to provide support, but also to be auditors and reviewers. All right, so y'all are cooking up some good comments, and so I appreciate that. Let's close out maybe with like final thoughts. My final thought is that I'm really appreciative of our time. I think we've actually never gotten a chance to meet, and so it's tough to be sort of to do this work generally, but I think it's harder to do it in our own worlds with everything going on. So I appreciate y'all for engaging so thoughtfully. I sincerely mean that, and really like generating some really great work and questions and sticking to your guns and pushing each other, and I'm here for all that. I am available, as you all know, so reach out. Let's not disappear from each other, and that's it. You have a good few. I'll get you your grades and all that in a few in a few days, and you'll I know that's why you came for the grade, so I got that figured out. And then that'll be that. Cool. Any last words before I end our broadcast and move us on?
I just think it was super cool to have this experience to round it off. Perfect way, because sitting in our rooms and looking at the content by ourselves doesn't do justice to something that is by nature a conversational topic. So this was a perfect way to round it out. So yeah, thank you guys for coming. Nice meeting you, and it was a good conversation we had today.
I agree.
Cool. All right. Well, be well. We're saying bye to our audience and bye to your little sis. And, we'll hopefully cross paths serendipitously at some point in the future. Peace.